Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to call to order this meeting of the Santa Barbara Board of Supervisors on May 20th, 2025. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Lavanino. Supervisor Lee.
Here.
Supervisor Hartman.
Here.
Supervisor Nelson. Chair Capps.
And I'm here.
I would like to note for the record that Supervisor Lavanino and Supervisor Nelson are absent for today's hearing.
Okay, at this time, please join us in pledging allegiance to the flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, the sun is shining today, but it is definitely a very dark time in our county. It's with profound sadness that I share the heartbreaking news that many of you already know about the 3 young lives that were lost, Dos Pueblos students who also worked on behalf of our county. Jake Curtis, Michael Oshner, and Alexander Wood. I was at Dos Pueblos last night as a mom. It's an unspeakable nightmare that has occurred and affecting so many families, the Dos Pueblos community, our county. And I just want to remember that these are young folks who decided to spend their time with us as a county protecting others. And it was in Supervisor Hartman's district, this accident, and I wanted to ask her to speak as well before we take a moment of silence.
We are heartbroken by the devastating crash that claimed the lives of Jake, Michael, and Alexander, 3 bright young people from Dos Pueblos High School, while also leaving 2 others seriously injured. They were caravanning home from junior lifeguard training at Halama Beach and were valued members of our county parks team. These young men were not only part of the Dos Pueblos community, but also part of our Santa Barbara County family. Words cannot capture how deeply saddened we are. This tragedy has shaken our entire community, and our hearts go out to the families, friends, and co-workers who are grieving this unimaginable loss. The whole county mourns with you.
So now we'll take a brief moment of silence. Thank you, and thank you for joining us today. The next item of business is the approval of our minutes from our last meeting, which was May 13th. May I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Now, Madam CEO, would you please provide us with your report?
There's no report this morning, Chair.
Okay. Madam Clerk, any announcements about today's meeting?
Chair Capps and members of the board, I do have a few announcements this morning. We received a request from the department to continue departmental item number 1. Departmental item number 1 is from the Planning and Development Department. It is regarding the emergency shelters zoning ordinance amendments. The department is requesting a continuance to the June 24th, 2025 Board of Supervisors meeting. Lastly, for our Board of Supervisors methods of public participation and to provide public comment or general public comment on an item on today's agenda, please see page 2 of the agenda. Individuals that would like to provide verbal comment may do so via Zoom by registering in advance via the link available on page 2. If you have any questions, please contact the clerk of the board's office at 805-568-2240. That concludes my announcements for today.
Okay, thanks. And we will vote on D1 when we get to it for streamlining our minutes. So the next we go to our administrative agenda, and I'd just like to ask if any board members have any items to pull. Okay, well, I know that A9 was pulled by the public, so that'll be the one that we'll vote on later. Okay, so now I'll entertain a motion to approve the remainder of the administrative agenda, other than A9.
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is our resolutions. Madam Clerk. Administrative item number 1.
Chair Capps and members of the board, administrative item number 1 is sponsored by Supervisor Capps and Supervisor Hartman. It is to adopt a resolution in opposition of federal cuts to the Head Start program. Joining us here in person, we have James Kiriakou, Board Chair of Communify. If you'll please join us at the podium, and all those who would like to join you, I will read the resolution into the record. Whereas the Head Start program launched in 1965 as part of President Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society Initiative, it is a comprehensive early childhood education, health, nutrition, and family support program designed to break the cycle of poverty by preparing low-income children for success in school and life. And whereas Communified has delivered Head Start services to over 55,000 children and families in Santa Barbara County since 1967 and currently operates 20 campuses countywide, providing high-quality early education to nearly 600 children each year. And whereas children who participate in Head Start are also more likely to graduate high school and attend college, and less likely to face poor health outcomes, enter foster care, or become justice involved later in life. And whereas Head Start also supports parents through programs that enhance educational and employment outcomes, reduce stress, improve family stability, and elevate voices through Strong Parents Council and annual representation on Communify's Board of Directors. And whereas Head Start in Santa Barbara County provides over 160,000 nutritious meals annually, as well as free medical, dental, vision, and behavioral wellness screenings, ensuring our most vulnerable children enter school ready to learn and thrive. And whereas unilateral federal funding reductions to Head Start will have devastating impacts on working families, particularly those experiencing poverty, homelessness, or housing insecurity, and would jeopardize the foundational early learning supports that are essential to an equitable and thriving community. Now, therefore, be it hereby ordered and resolved that the County of Santa Barbara affirms the essential role of Head Start in breaking cycles of poverty and promoting health development and preparing children and families for long-term success, and urges the federal government to restore and expand funding for Head Start programs, passed and adopted today.
Thank you. On behalf of Communify, I just want to thank Chair Capps and Supervisor Hartman for sponsoring this resolution, and it's my pleasure to introduce our CEO, Pat Keelan, who's going to speak today.
Thank you.
Chair Capps, Board of Supervisors, distinguished Board of Supervisors, we would like to take this opportunity to thank you for this timely resolution. It's timely not only because we are at risk of losing our Head Start funding at the federal level, but also because we are celebrating Head Start, 60 years of Head Start services countywide as well as nationwide. I would like to provide the board with a brief update on our federal funding. In the last few weeks, we have seen a number of stories come out that indicated that Head Start funding was in fact safe. What we know is that in late April, Congress passed what is called the blueprint budget that outlined the requirement of $1.5 trillion in cuts to the federal budget. Included in that, we believe, was the Head Start program. A few weeks ago, the Trump administration published its skinny budget, which did not identify Head Start for federal cuts. However, we know that the skinny budget fell far short of cutting the needed programs and services to meet the $1.5 trillion that Congress has identified for budget cuts. So with that in mind, we're very grateful today for bringing visibility to the Head Start program here locally, because we know that until the last vote is cast in Congress, likely later this month, that Head Start is still on the chopping block. So thank you for this time this morning, this recognition on behalf of the 55,000 plus children and families that we have served since 1967. We are very grateful. I'd like now to introduce Jennifer McDonald, who is our Director of Children's Services. And on the line today is also Kim Eckhart, who is our Assistant Director of Children's Services, but also has an incredible, compelling success story as a Head Start parent herself. So now I'd like to turn things over to Jennifer.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the recognition and the support of Head Start in Santa Barbara County. What makes Head Start unique to early care and education is its 4 pillars. We provide family service component, which supports the entire family, providing leadership opportunities to parents in our policy council, which is one branch of our governance in the program, parent meetings at a center-based level, and parent education. We support families in achieving goals that they set for their child and themselves, and we also assist in referring them to outside community resources so that they're stable and able to meet the needs of their families. One of the other pillars of Head Start is health services. We provide over 572 health screenings and dental screenings every year to our children and to our children at the centers. We ensure that they have a medical home and they're up to date on their physicals and their immunizations, and we support the families in navigating these systems. The other component of Head Start is education, early care and education, research-based curriculum implemented to fidelity, and trained, educated teaching staff. All of our teachers have associate degrees and bachelor's degree and hold California Child Development permits. Head Start is committed to the professional development and the education of children, staff, and families. The last component of the 4 pillars of Head Start is the locally designed options. So we use our community-based needs assessment and the data of our county to really gear our services to the children and the families that lie within Cuyama, Guadalupe, Orchid, Santa Maria, Lompoc, Buellton, Carpinteria, Goleta, and Santa Barbara. Did I miss anybody? And just thank you for your recognition and your support of the Head Start program. And I'd like to introduce Kim Eichert. She's our Assistant Director. She started in our program as a parent. So thank you for being here, Kim.
You're welcome. Thank you guys and good morning. I want to share a little story about why Head Start is important to me and how it impacted my life. As a young teen, my family started to experience a lot of dysfunction. I dropped out of school in 8th grade. I became a teen parent. I got pregnant at 15, had my son at 16. I was able to go back to school, graduated at 19, where I was due to have my second child, and had a third child soon after. Shortly after that, I moved to the Cuyama Valley. In Cuyama Valley, we had the Head Start teachers come out and do recruitment. And one day, the teachers knocked on my door, talked to me about Head Start. I filled out application, and soon my son got enrolled in the center. As he was enrolled, he was such an active child that I volunteered quite often to support, just with his needs. During that time, the staff really encouraged me to go to school. They, you help us a lot, you volunteer a lot. They encouraged me to be part of the policy council, where I did join. I was the policy council member for 3 years. I enrolled in college in early childhood education and completed my associate's degree. Soon after completing my degree, I applied to work at the Head Start program. I became a teacher. Soon after becoming a teacher, I was promoted to be a supervisor. I worked as a supervisor for about 14 years and was promoted to program manager, and now I'm currently assistant director. I truly believe without the encouragement and the support that I had at that time, I would not have moved in the direction I moved to. And I am greatly thankful to the program and to the staff and to the encouragement and how they supported me as a parent to further my education and the opportunities they gave me to participate in the policy council. That gave me confidence to then also support my community out in Cuyama and be part of a recreation board and the resource center board where I still continue to support my community. Thank you.
Supervisor Hartman.
When I was a high schooler, my first volunteer activity was with Head Start. And it was really part of the Great Society and the belief that we could lift families out of poverty. It's interesting, since then we've learned a lot about the developing brain, and I think of our first 5 and those first 5 years and how critical they are to have an enriched experience. And so Head Start really is an evidence-based program that works. And we've heard today that it's not just for the children, but it's for the families and the staff who does preschool teacher. I have a 3-year-old grandson, and an hour I'm exhausted, so I don't know how to do it anymore with a whole classroom, but it is a very demanding job. And so this, with 20 different preschools, Head Start programs throughout our county, it's a really vital service, and so we have to do everything we can to ensure that it continues.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't agree more. It's such a stellar program from so many angles, from the data, from the success stories that Kip shared, from the strong bipartisan support it's had for decades in our federal government. So thank you for giving us an update, and we're rooting for a Head Start. When I'm out and about in the community, people ask, well, what's happening with Head Start? And I tell them it's 600 families, it's a lifeline. But as we've just heard, it's so much more than that for those families and the infrastructure. So keep us posted, Ms. Keelan, and the rest of you, please, because we, as a county, we really stand by you. Thank you. Supervisor Lee.
I just want to say, as being on board with Communify and working with everybody, I'm very impressed about all the work. And people also ask me about Head Start, and I just say you have to call James Kiriakou, and he will answer your question. So thank you, James, and thank you to everybody for all you do.
Okay, thanks for being with us. We'll move on to administrative item number 2, Madam Clerk.
Chair Capps and members of the board, administrative item number 2 is sponsored by Supervisor Lee. It is to adopt a resolution proclaiming the month of May 2025 as Search and Rescue Month in Santa Barbara County. Joining us here, we have Don Van Doge and Sheriff Bill Brown. And if any of the members of the SBC SAR team would like to join you as well, please feel free. I will now read the resolution into the record. Whereas Santa Barbara County Search and Rescue Team, SBC SAR, is a highly trained, all-volunteer organization operating under the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office with over 60 years of life-saving service in wilderness, urban, and disaster settings. And whereas SBC SAR responds 24/7 to emergencies, including lost hikers, injured climbers, missing persons, natural disasters, and community-wide crises such as the 2018 Montecito debris flow, often in partnership with local, state, and federal agencies. And whereas team members undergo continuous training in rope rescue, wilderness survival, tracking navigation, BLS certified medical aid, UAV operations, and disaster response, maintaining accreditation with the Mountain Rescue Association, and supporting initiatives like Project Lifesaver to protect vulnerable populations. And whereas the team's mission is supported by 2 nonprofit organizations, the Santa Barbara County Search and Rescue, Inc. provides operational funding, compliance, and oversight, while the Santa Barbara Search and Rescue Foundation raises funds to sustain long-term growth, training, and equipment needs. And whereas the dedication of SBC SAR's volunteers on call 365 days a year have saved countless lives, while their public outreach efforts promote outdoor safety and prevent avoidable rescues through the community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that that the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims May 2025 as Search and Rescue Month and commends the Santa Barbara County Search and Rescue Team for their service, sacrifice, and steadfast commitment to public safety, passed and adopted today.
Well, good morning, Chair Capps and members of the board. Thank you so much for recognizing our world-class search and rescue team here and recognizing May as Search and Rescue Month. You've heard me many times before talk about what a great job these men and women do. And I'm very proud to share with you some details of some of the remarkable work that they continue to do over the years. And let's take a quick look at some key statistics that this team has put together in the last 5 years. Let's start with the heart of Santa Barbara County Search and Rescue, our 50 dedicated volunteers. From 2019 to 2024, they contributed an incredible 66,812 hours of service. That number alone shows the deep commitment that they have to keeping our community safe. When emergencies arise, Santa Barbara County Search and Rescue steps up. Between 2019 and 2024, they handled 636 calls for service, assisting 569 individuals. And just think about that for a moment. These are people who, no matter what time it is, during the work week, the evenings, or the weekends, when they get a call, they drop whatever it is that they're doing and go and help someone else who is in distress. Their commitment to doing that is one of the most valuable things. And it's been said that one of the most important things that human beings can give to one another is their time, because it's the only thing that we all have in equally uncertain proportions. And the men and women of this team exemplify that commitment and that gift. From lost hikers to car accidents, they devoted 20,115 hours to incident responses, with each call averaging just under 4 hours. This effort equates to 8 full-time deputies annually, saving our county nearly $950,000 each year in salaries and benefits. Their preparedness is unmatched. From 2019 to 2024, the team invested 39,060 hours in training to hone their skills and 7,637 hours in administrative work and first responder preparation. These hours ensure that they're always ready to respond effectively, no matter what the situation. Santa Barbara County's search and rescue versatility is evident in the range of calls that they've managed over those years. They tackled hiking and backpacking incidents, motorcycle crashes, hang glider emergencies, mountain biking accidents, body recoveries, and more. Their ability to handle diverse challenges makes them invaluable to our county. Santa Barbara County's Search and Rescue's dedication has strengthened our community's safety and resilience. And as we celebrate May as Search and Rescue Month, let's honor these volunteers for their life-saving work. We thank you for your support of this great team, and I want to introduce someone who's been instrumental in ensuring that our Search and Rescue team has the financial support that it needs to continue their important mission, and that is the Santa Barbara Search and Rescue Foundation President, John Van Dong. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you very much for giving us this time and this proclamation this month. It means a lot to us. We started this foundation last year at the bequest of a good friend of mine, Joe Plowman, who is also a member of the Search and Rescue team. And at the time that he called me and said, look, we need to raise a lot more money for search and rescue, I said, Joe, I'm buried right now. I don't know what I can do. And he said, I'll do all the work if you'll help us put this together. And a man of his word, he has done the lion's share of the work. So Joe, thank you very much. Unfortunately, my family got involved with this search and rescue through a very tragic event 35 years ago this month, when my brother was mountain biking on the San Ysidro Trail and went off the side, and we called search and rescue. Unbeknownst to us, this group of people, to Bill's words, dropped everything they were doing that day to come out to search for my younger brother. Unfortunately, it went from a recovery it went from a rescue to a recovery operation. But the passion that my family has had for search and rescue throughout the years has been there and been ever present. This foundation now gives us the ability to go forth and raise money. I'm a finance guy, and so on top of Bill's words that he had of over 636 call-outs over the last 5 years, equating to the equivalent of 8 full-time deputies at a cost to this county would be over $945,000 annually. Over the last 5 years, that would equate to $4,725,000. So while I'm not asking you to make that contribution, I am asking you to keep that in mind, because these men and women do this out of the goodness of their heart so that others may live. So on behalf of the Search and Rescue Foundation, thank you so much for this proclamation on behalf of this, and thank you. And as the last word, we've had enough applause, but I do really want to, out of my heart and soul, thank the men and women of the Search and Rescue, especially those who are present here today. Thank you.
All right. Supervisor Lee.
I just want to make a brief comment, say we are incredibly grateful and so honored to have the best of the best here in our county serving us. So thank you for all you do, and thank you.
Supervisor Hartman.
I just wanted to add that I'm often in the back country, and I hope I never have to need your services, but it makes me feel a lot better knowing that you're there in case. And I'm sure that everybody feels that way. So thank you again.
And I'll just add my praise as well, Mr. Von Don, to the fact that you took a family tragedy and have turned some of that grief into such support for so many others. And I just want to acknowledge that you all put your life in danger by doing this, by saving others. And that's an incredible characteristic of courage. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to administrative item number 3.
Chair Capps and members of the board, administrative item number 3 is sponsored by Supervisor Lee. It is to adopt a resolution proclaiming the month of May 2025 as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in Santa Barbara County. Joining us here in person, we have Karina Ju. If you will join us at the podium, I'll now read the resolution into the record. Whereas Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is a time to recognize the significant contributions of our past and present AAPI community members and bring awareness to the difficulties that this community has endured and continues to endure. And whereas May was selected as Heritage Month in 1978 to commemorate 2 historical milestones in AAPI history: the arrival of the first Japanese immigrants to the United States on May 7th, 1843, and the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad on May 10th, 1869, an achievement made possible largely through the labor of Chinese immigrants. And whereas the first Asian to settle in Santa Barbara was Filipino Antonio Miranda Rodriguez, a founding pobladores of Los Angeles who arrived in Santa Barbara in 1783 and was buried in the Presidio Chapel, after whom many Filipino residents and the creation of the Filipino Community Association at 425 State. And whereas Santa Barbara was once home to a thriving Chinatown centered on Canyon Perdido Street beginning in the 1860s, and these early residents contribute to the region through abalone fishing, shipbuilding, farming, and small businesses. In the early 20th century, the Japanese residents settled in a Nihonmachi in the Canyon Perdido Street area, including a grocery, boarding house, and churches, and established successful farming businesses throughout the county. And whereas Santa Barbara County residents were among the Japanese American, Filipino American, and Chinese American World War II veterans who were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal in 2011, 2017, and 2020 respectively, in recognition of their service in spite of the abridgment of denial of the rights of citizenship. Now therefore, be it hereby ordered and resolved that this Board of Supervisors declares May as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in Santa Barbara County and encourages all residents to honor and celebrate the vibrant legacy of the AAPI community, passed and adopted today.
Good morning. morning, Chair Caps and members of the board. My name's Karina Jew. I'm an organizer with the Santa Barbara AAPI Solidarity Network, and I want to thank you for this annual recognition of our community. I'm always appreciative of the opportunity we have in May to share some of our heritage and especially the history of the AAPI community in Santa Barbara County. In 2024, our group was fortunate to receive one of the Racial Equity Fund grants, which allowed us to hold a wonderful celebration of the Lunar New Year on the grounds of the Presidio, where we had simulated fireworks, lion dancing, and projected images of the people of the original and new Chinatowns for approximately 500 people over 2 days. And it was a wonderful celebration, and I'm really appreciative to this board for that opportunity. And also, I really appreciate that you have continued to support the Racial Equity Fund. So thank you for that. And so one of the things I learned as a result of this project was that starting in the 1850s, the Chinese came here in part to join the abalone harvesting industry, and that for 40 years, they built ships to support the industry. The Chinese junks, the kind you would see in Hong Kong, were built over on Cannon Perdido Street, which, like blew my mind, the imagination of that image. And so when we began this endeavor of this project, it was because of the recognition of the 100-year anniversary of the 1925 earthquake. And there was a feeling that the story of the Chinese in the post-earthquake era and the dissolution of their community shouldn't be forgotten. So in my newspaper research, I learned that Santa Barbara City Council actually in 1926 condemned and burned down an old adobe that some very elderly Chinese had been living in. And mere days after another mysterious blaze in Chinatown. And in that era of the Chinese Exclusion Act, these burnings of Chinatowns in California and North America were really, sadly, they were not uncommon. Although official government participation was a little more rare. And yet, people like Elmer Whitaker helped the Chinese rebuild a new Chinatown a block away. And in that same area came to be Santa Barbara's Nihonmachi, or Japantown. And beyond that Nihonmachi, the Japanese also had farms all throughout Santa Barbara County. But with Executive Order 9066, which ordered the incarceration of the Japanese during World War II, this community would lose their homes, their businesses, and their farms. And those that tried to return after the war couldn't come back. Because oftentimes, well, they could come back, but people wouldn't hire them. And so they often started communities in other areas. And so I'm bringing this up because I happened to see a film a couple of years ago, and it was called Alternative Facts, The Lies of Executive Order 9066. And it streams on PBS if you want to check it out, but it's a really good film. But it discusses the false reports of espionage that were used to justify the incarceration. And when I watched it on my computer and they flashed the original documents that were used at the Supreme Court on the screen, I saw the words Santa Maria Valley, and I was really curious about that, and I was watching on my computer, so I froze it, and I looked, and I downloaded the documents from the U.S. Archives, because I was just curious, and I'm that kind of person. And I read that Santa Barbara County and its residents and farmers were, and their proximity to infrastructure like the lighthouse and railroads, that was part of the justification that was used by the government in defending the executive order at the Supreme Court. And so, you know, Santa Barbara was sort of, well, we can't say that everybody in California or on the West Coast is disloyal, but for example, Santa Barbara looks like this. How could it possibly look like this if there's not something going on? However, there were government lawyers from the Department of Justice that, in researching their briefs for the Supreme Court, they learned that these U.S. intelligence reports didn't support the espionage narrative at all. And because they had ethical duty, they put in a footnote to those briefs to the Supreme Court, stating that these weren't supported by U.S. intelligence. So when the Solicitor General of that administration found out about this footnote, he literally stopped the presses at the Supreme Court and had that footnote removed. And they reprinted it without it. And so it wasn't until 40 years later that this deception, was uncovered. And so I want to share this story in this moment because Santa Barbara County happened to have this role. And also because the exact same laws, which had been dormant, but they were the laws that facilitated this tragedy, they have been revived. And because government officials in that story both did their duty and subverted their duty. And so I wanted to share that in here with our government officials and our government workers to just reinforce the role that you play in protecting our democracy and how so critical it is. Anyway, thank you. And I want to introduce Danielle Cosino, Zoe Fan, and Joshua Barreto of the UCSB Filipino Cultural Night.
Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Zoe Fan. I use she, her pronouns, and I am this year's executive coordinator for PCN. I'm here with Danielle Cosino, my marketing coordinator, and we are proud representatives of UC Santa Barbara's Filipino Cultural Night, also known as PCN. First, we would like to thank SB AAPI Solidarity Network for inviting us to speak, and to thank the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors for recognizing May as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. AAPI Heritage Month is a time to honor the stories, struggles, and contributions of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in this country and in our local communities. Around this time of year, university campuses across the nation host cultural nights, which are community-led events that showcase the rich histories, identities, and traditions of AAPI cultures, while inviting people of all backgrounds to learn, connect, and celebrate with us. At UCSB, we celebrate this month with events like Vietnamese Cultural Night, Nikkei Student Union Cultural Night, and of course, our very own Filipino Cultural Night. These events are original, student-run productions that blend storytelling, traditional and modern dance, theater, and music to not only entertain, but to preserve our histories, affirm identity, and build cross-cultural understanding.
In today's political climate, where diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are increasingly under threat across the country, cultural nights remain more important than ever. They are more than just performances. These events serve as acts of remembrance, resistance, celebration, and cultural pride. They provide spaces for education and solidarity, not just within the AAPI community, but among other communities. Cultural nights are powerful reminders that our cultures are vibrant, our histories matter, and our existence is undeniable. They allow for our stories to be seen, heard, and valued, especially in spaces where AAPI voices are often overlooked or underrepresented. With that in mind, we would like to invite everyone here to join us this Saturday, May 24th at 5 p.m. at UCSB's Campbell Hall for the 34th Annual Filipino Cultural Night. Whether or not you're part of the Filipino community, we welcome you to experience the tradition, creativity, and heart that makes PCN a very powerful celebration. We hope to see you there. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much.
Supervisor Lee.
I just want to say thank you for your great comments. Just a question about the event. Are you going to have lechon there?
I wish.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, that ends our wonderful resolutions this morning. We have one more. Excuse me about that. One more. My apologies. Madam Clerk.
Chair Capps and members of the board, administrative item number 4, sponsored by Supervisor Lee and Supervisor Hartman. It is to adopt a resolution proclaiming the month of May 2025 as Older Americans Month in Santa Barbara County. Joining us here in person, we have Margaret Weiss, Children and Adult Network Director, who will be introducing the 2025 Senior of the Year honorees, and via Zoom, Dorothy Schlitz, Central Coast Commission for Senior Citizens. If you will please join us at the podium, I'll read the resolution into the record. Whereas the County of Santa Barbara is home to a vibrant and growing population of older adults who continue to enrich and strengthen our communities through their experience, wisdom, leadership, and service. And whereas we honor the lifelong contributions of older adults and recognize their continued role in shaping a more just, inclusive, and resilient community. And whereas Santa Barbara County is committed to creating an age-friendly region by advancing priorities aligned with California Master Plan for Aging, including the expansion of housing options, caregiving supports, transportation access, and equitable health outcomes. And whereas local partners such as the Santa Barbara County Adult and Aging Network and community-based organization across the region are helping to implement these priorities and ensure that older residents can age with dignity, independence, and connection. And whereas investing in the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of older adults through home and community-based services, access to lifelong learning, and inclusive civic engagement benefits residents of all ages and strengthens the social fabric of our county. Now, therefore, be it hereby ordered and resolved that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Santa Barbara does hereby proclaim May 2025 as Older Americans Month and encourages all residents to join in honoring the legacy, strength, and continued contribution of older adults in our community. Staff would also like to invite all community members to join in on the 40th Annual Older Americans Month celebration hosted by the Central Coast Commission for Senior Citizens, recognizing outstanding individuals and organizations on Tuesday, May 27, 2025 at 1 p.m. via Zoom. Passed and adopted today.
Laura, just one quick.
Oh, yes, Supervisor Hartman.
I believe we have honorees here in Santa Barbara as well as in Santa Maria, so just wanted to note that.
Oh, good. Yes, please proceed.
All right. Well, Supervisor Hartman, Supervisor Lee, and all board members, thank you so much for recognizing Older Americans Month. You do so much to raise up the vibrancy of our older adult community. And what we know from the community is that their wish is to be able to age in place. And I think that's probably true for all of us. And we also know that aging in place requires a certain amount of support and resources to be able to enjoy optimal health and happiness and safety. I really feel that with this resolution, you demonstrate that bold leadership that we need for healthy aging across the lifespan, and appreciate all your efforts in that regard. And to the individuals who are recognized with this proclamation, they are the best examples of aging with vibrancy that we could ask for. And I will read a little bit about each individual and acknowledge them for their great services to the community. We have, for Senior Citizen of the Year, Joan Cayette, and I believe Joan is at the other location. Joan is one of the site hosts in Lompoc, and she received multiple nominations for this award. And her nominations indicated she always has a smile and is very helpful and accommodating to all the people who come in for a meal. And that just sounds wonderful and like what we all want to see for people who come for that service. So thank you to Joan. We also have Doreen Ross, who is the Santa Barbara County-wide Red Cross emergency point person. This means Doreen is there. Fire, flood, mudslide. You will find Doreen and her husband Wayne at a shelter coordinating logistics and organizing all of the personal needs for the event. That is not enough for Doreen. She is also noted for being the North County leader of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, which builds beds and donates beds for children who don't have them. And in addition, Doreen is the president of the Lompoc Valley Community Kitchen, providing hot meals 6 days a week. So really terrific service to the community. Thank you, Doreen. This resolution also recognizes Senior Worker of the Year, and we have two individuals, Carmen Escalante, who is the site host at the Oasis in Orcutt, and if one senior center is not enough, Carmen is also at the Guadalupe Senior Center as a volunteer. She's noted for always smiling, always willing to go the extra mile, and she is another individual nominated by not just one, but multiple individuals. Thank you, Carmen. Here in Santa Barbara, I think we have Rosanna Redford. Rosanna, are you in the audience? Okay, maybe she didn't make it in this morning. Hopefully you're listening to us on another venue. Rosanna is the site host at Presidio Springs in Santa Barbara. Another individual who got multiple nominations. Rosanna is noted for having a good heart, fun to work with, caring, polite, helpful, and a good cook. So great qualities to have. The next category is Caregiver of the Year. And caregiving is one of the concerns that we in the Master Plan for Aging and Adult and Aging Network are very focused on. It is a tremendously stressful line of work. Whether you are a family caregiver or a professional caregiver, it's a very hard job. And our Caregiver of the Year is Estella Usher. Estella is, as the nomination puts it, simply amazing. And as I look through the description of her work, this truly is amazing. She commutes from Los Angeles to Santa Maria and provides care in 3 homes with 12 elders in each facility in Los Angeles, as well as 3 homes with 12 elders in each facility in Santa Maria. So she is putting in the lion's share of caregiving. And in addition to her regularly scheduled work, she is on call 24/7 to help individuals. Even on a vacation, she's been known to take calls to help troubleshoot and give advice and suggestions to other caregivers. It's unending work, and that expertise and support is surely very appreciated. Our last category is Senior Program of the Year. And do we have anyone in the room from the Terrace Foundation? Oh, excellent. Thank you so much for being here and for the work that you do. This nomination is noted for John Jeffries. Is that you, sir? Wonderful. As founder of the Terrace Foundation. And the Terrace Foundation's motto is, we don't just feed people, we teach people to feed themselves. Their mission is to empower and educate communities to take control of their food supply by providing nutritional equity and sustainability through eco-friendly agricultural solutions. They use a model called Harvest to Plate. One of their goals is ending food insecurity. And their nutrient-rich produce is donated through strategic partnerships to those in need and available to the entire community. If that were not enough for the community, they also engage children in education about nutrition and gardening. So they're really a full-service nutrition program. Our last awardee in the category of Senior Program of the Year is one that really gives me a smile, and maybe will to some of you as well. And this is Senior Dance Instructor Yolanda Gonzalez. Yolanda teaches dance classes to seniors in 3 cities twice a week. She is a busy, busy lady. And part of teaching dance in Yolanda's world is not just the dance steps themselves, but teaching confidence, facilitating better balance, which we all know leads to fall prevention, and that's beneficial to the whole community, safer adults, the older adults. And she's encouraging in her work for people to remain active and facilitating that end goal. Her nominations indicate that she is patient-friendly, extremely prepared to teach all of her seniors, and then takes it beyond the classroom with a group of 12 seniors who now travel to senior facilities, care facilities, hospitals to perform and entertain and encourage others. Really an impressive group of older adults, and I thank you for the opportunity to learn a little bit about them and to acknowledge them, and for the resolution for this year's Older Americans Month.
Thank you so much. Supervisor Hartman.
And just briefly, I think it's terrific to have models of active seniors and how they still are contributing and engaged with life. I think that's really the key to successful aging. And just wanted to thank Margaret Weiss, who's leading the charge on our master plan for aging, so that we can pull a lot of these programs together and have a more integrated, supportive web that so seniors can thrive in our community. So thank you, Margaret.
My pleasure.
And I just will chime in. I'm not surprised at all. All the honorees do amazing work, often unseen work. But Pilgrim Terrace is one of my special places that I love to go. Have been many, many years with my mom. The food is incredible. The fact that they grow it there. It is so important to focus on the nutrition that we all need, but especially those who are aging. And it's delicious, so I encourage anyone to check it out. So thank you. Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're actually done with resolutions, so we will move to the one item that was pulled by the public. Madam Clerk.
Chair Capps and members of the board. Administrative item number 9 is from the Public Works Department. It is to consider recommendations regarding Amendment Number 2 to the Memorandum of Understanding between Santa Barbara County Association of Governments and the County of Santa Barbara for the Sheffield Drive to Ortega Hill pedestrian and bicycle connection. This item is located within the 1st District.
So we'll go to the person who pulled this, is that correct?
Yes, Chair Capps and members of the board, we have Scott Wenz.
Okay.
Chair, members of the board, Scott Wenz representing Cars Are Basic. We can't find a program that's more unnecessary in the county of Santa Barbara than this program. Let's go back 30-some years when I first started doing transportation issues. I didn't know a STIP from a F-TIP. I didn't know a level of service or anything else. Now we go to Naomi Schwartz and the bicycle path that she created on the front end of Ortega Ridge. So why are you putting a bike path on the backside of Ortega Ridge when you already have one that costs $4.5 million on the front of it? That's number one. Number two, let's go to see what happened in Summerland. Summerland was not happy with the Salud Carbajal, bulb outs, and other programs that were put in there. They fought it. The majority of the businesses and people that were there fought it, and it was rammed down their throats. This is another such issue. The County of Santa Barbara, if you take a look at all of the issues that you have in backlog, is bankrupt. 20 years ago, the County of Santa Barbara stated that they had $400 million in capital programs that they could not cover. I haven't seen most of that covered yet. So you have a steep hill coming up out of Summerland. You have a steep hill coming down. And you're going to spend, now that you just have an increase in this program of $200,000? For what? Are you going to have people walk from Summerland over down to Coast Village Road? I've watched the Jameson Lane bike path. That was an absolute failure. It hasn't produced anybody. You've got an unpedestrian-friendly San Ysidro and Olive Mill roundabout where people are going to have to walk through there if they're coming over or biking from Summerland. This is not necessary. It's a waste of time and money. This is not a program that the board should have even entered into. And I can't figure out why it's still going. I urge you to stop this program and look at the amount of carbon that's produced for every yard of cement that's poured on this project. It's amazing.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion unless there's any comments. Supervisor Lee?
Move staff recommendation.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. So that concludes our administrative agenda. And when you're ready, Madam Clerk, we'll go to general public comment, comments by the public that are not part of our agenda today.
Chair Capps and members of the board, we have Thomas Becker to be followed by Scott Wenz. Thomas?
Do you want me first, or do you want Mr. Becker first?
Mr. Becker, we've unmuted you on our end. Can you unmute yourself on yours? Looks as though Thomas is having some audio issues. Thomas, I see your hand raised. We have you unmuted on our end. We will go to Mr. Wenz, and then we will come back to you, Thomas.
Chair, members of the board, Scott Wenz, representing solely myself, no other person. I've been trying for 4 years to get the County of Santa Barbara to buy some heavy lifting drones to have them placed along the shoreline of the County of Santa Barbara. In the Army, I was a WSIT. I trained troops in Troop Command for water safety. I've been a head lifeguard. I've been a swim and tennis club manager. And I can tell you right now that the County of Santa Barbara, the County of Los Angeles has already implemented this program, and it's been very successful. The reason I'm here bringing this back again is listening to the radio today. In Florida, there was a private individual who had a heavy lift drone. He saw an individual, she was being pulled out to the ocean. She couldn't get back in. He attached a flotation device to his private drone. He lifted it up, flew it out over it, dropped it down on, and she's saved. This is the kind of thing you have to do. This is a pittance. You have drones that your public works use to go over like 166 and other locations to see whether or not there's been any damage. So if you can create a drone for that, you could at least have on the heavily used beaches of the County of Santa Barbara a drone and trained individuals to do this. This is just common sense. And as a water safety instructor, I urge you to do it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, for our second speaker, if he's ready.
Thomas Becker via Zoom. Thomas, are you able to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Wonderful, we can. Please proceed.
Good, thank you. Sable Oil has begun producing oil again. The anticipated production from their fields is 40,000 barrels a day. The pipeline, which they are repairing, has a 300,000 barrel a day capacity. Now, the Point Arguero units are currently being decommissioned. I think that should be stopped because Point Arguero can be used as a marine terminal to add oil into that underutilized pipeline. So we could bring oil down from Alaska more to the Point Arguero units, which can be converted to marine terminals, and add that oil into the current 300,000 barrel a day underutilized pipeline. Now, ExxonMobil proposed reducing the pipeline from 300,000 barrels a day to 30,000 barrels a day. Remember that? They were going to build a new pipeline. The environmental groups fought that Exxon proposal. They absolutely fought it tooth and nail and killed that 30,000 barrel a day pipeline. What they did was allow for the retention of the 300,000 barrel a day pipeline, which means that you, instead of 30,000 barrels a day with the proposed, you can now put back in 300,000 barrels a day, 10 times the amount of the Exxon proposed new pipeline. Thank you, Environmental Defense Center, for being the best friend that offshore oil production ever had. Now, I want to remind you that when that blowout took place in May of 2015, Obama, Biden were in power in the feds. Jerry Brown was governor, and I think it was Doreen Farr who was 3rd District Supervisor. One of the direct contributors to that blowout was the reduction of federal funding for pipeline inspections. That was done by Obama, Biden. That was funding that was not only used for federal inspectors, but also given to state and local inspectors. And Obama, Biden cut that funding. So who's going to be blamed for the May 2015 blowout? Maybe Obama, Biden, maybe Jerry Brown, maybe Doreen Farr. Can't blame Trump. Nowhere around at that time. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you to our members of the public. With the conclusion of general public comment, we'll now go to the departmental agenda. Madam Clerk, item number 1, will you please read it into the record?
Chair Capps and members of the board, departmental item number 1 is from the Planning and Development Department. It is a hearing to consider recommendations regarding the emergency shelters zoning ordinance amendments and the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve case numbers 24 ORD 21 and 24 ORD 22 to comply with the new state laws to implement Program 9 of Chapter 5 of the 2023 through 2031 Housing Element Update. As noted previously, we received a request from the department to continue this item to the June 24th, 2025 agenda.
Okay, so I think we need to just ask for public comment on the continuance request, if that exists.
Chair Capps and members of the board, we have no request to speak for this item.
Okay, Supervisor Hartman.
So I move we continue this item to June 24th.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Now we'll move on to item number 2, which is the Prohousing Designation Program.
Chair Capps and members of the board, departmental item number 2 is from the Community Services Department. It is a hearing to consider recommendations regarding the Prohousing Designation Program.
Chair Capps, members of the board, Jesus Armas, Community Services Director, joined by Lisa Plowman, our Planning and Development Director, as well as Joe Desvonick, our Assistant Director, and Lucille Boss, our Housing Programs Manager. As we all know, the state and Santa Barbara County are experiencing significant challenges meeting the housing needs of our respective areas of responsibility. The state has stepped forward in one respect, and that is to create a program where there's an opportunity for appropriate jurisdictions to receive some funding and to be considered in a priority status to receive funding insofar as policies and practices of that individual jurisdiction advances housing development in our, again, in our respective areas. So today we're going to present to you a request that the board authorize submitting an application to the state to receive a pro-housing designation. With that, let me invite the others on the team to speak.
Good morning, Chair Capps, members of the board. I am Joe Dezvonik, the Assistant Director for the Housing and Community Development Division in our Community Services Department. As the Director noted, with me today to present is Lucille Boss, the Housing Programs Manager in HCD. Next slide. Here are today's recommended actions for the board to consider, which we will review in detail at the end of our presentation. But overall, the purpose of the presentation today is to receive permission via a resolution that authorizes staff to apply for pro-housing designation with the state and participate in the program if our application is approved. The pro-housing designation program was established by the California Department of Housing and Community Development, and is meant to encourage local governments to implement housing-focused policies by offering incentives, such as prioritized access to state funding. Today, we'll provide an overview of the program, including a quick background on when and why this program was established, discuss the benefits and some potential drawbacks to participating in the program, and finally, we will look at what it took for us to build the application we hope to submit with the board's approval here today. I now turn it over to Lucille Boss. Lucille?
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Capps and members of the board. Lucille Boss, Housing Programs Manager. So we'll begin today with background. The state of California's 2019-2020 Budget Act provided a spectrum of support, incentives, and accountability measures to meet California's housing goals, and provided for the establishment of the voluntary pro-housing designation program. Both the state and local level recognize the current housing crisis, and this program is an effort to address the crisis. Local governments with the designation are eligible to apply for and can also receive priority processing or funding points when applying for competitive grant programs. Acquiring pro-housing designation aims to promote implementation of the housing element update. Local jurisdictions must meet specific criteria to be designated, which can be seen as a potential drawback. For example, the need for ongoing monitoring and evaluation may prompt additional administrative duties. I'll now focus on the benefits of the program and designation. Communities holding the designation are automatically awarded extra points in many competitive grant funding programs, some of which are listed on this slide. Grant funding, in conjunction with other resources, can help the county bridge the financial gap between the costs of affordable housing development and the availability of state and federal funding. Without this designation, applications in our county may not be as competitive on a statewide level. Moving into the process, County Planning and Development and Community Services Departments collaborated on the draft application before you today. It's important to note the county's draft application does not propose actions beyond what was approved in the housing element update, and specifically does not recommend further rezones. Eligibility threshold requirements included engaging in a public participation process for the draft pro-housing application. The application was included in today's materials and was also made available for public review beginning on April 11th. It was also shared with numerous stakeholder groups. Planning and Development and Community Services staff have worked closely with state housing and community development staff on the application, including multiple meetings and drafts. It appears that the county will score more than twice the minimum points necessary to qualify for the designation. I'll turn it back now to Joe Dezvonik.
So Chair Capps, members of the board, I present to you staff's recommended actions for today's item. 1, receive and file this report. 2, adopt a resolution authorizing the county to apply and participate in the state's California Pro-Housing Designation Program. And 3, determine that the recommended actions are not subject to CEQA. We certainly appreciate your time today. I look forward to your questions, comments, and direction.
Thank you for that presentation. Supervisor Hartman.
So you said that this pro-housing designation doesn't take any actions beyond our housing element update. And some in the community have been concerned that it will take away additional local control. So I just wonder if you could expand upon that, talk about some of the policies that are in our housing element update, and just elaborate, because I think it's important to understand this point in a little more detail.
Thank you, Board Member Hartman, through the chair. That's an excellent way of characterizing this. This is not intended to relinquish local control. It is actually, it's an effort to reaffirm local control in the form of indicating that the program will enable us to carry out the various policies, programs that the board adopted at the local level in the housing element. It is not requesting or seeking additional elements beyond what's described in that program. So I think it's actually an affirmation of local control rather than relinquishing local control. And Ms. Plowman, I think, can speak to some of the aspects of the element that may be pertinent here.
Supervisor Hartman, through the chair. So, we have 25 different programs in the housing element, and a number of them are tied to supporting more affordable housing. And this pro-housing designation, I think, will help us support those programs in that it provides a financial means to help get affordable housing on the ground. And so that's the way in which I think it helps us implement our housing element, because those are key objectives out of a number of our programs.
Does it distinguish between market rate and affordable housing?
Yes, the application adds additional points when communities are making a concerted effort to address the needs of affordable housing.
Supervisor Lee.
Has any other cities or counties designated themselves yet as pro-housing?
I took a look at the state website the other day, and as of May 1, there were 40 cities that have already received a designation. There were 6 counties, and then San Francisco, which of course is a city and county. So yes.
Has anybody denied themselves that pro-housing title? Or?
Well, I think to the extent that the others haven't applied, they've determined that it wasn't something they were interested in. What the state does is, upon receipt of an application, it will work with a local jurisdiction to identify comments, concerns over the specifics of an application, and encourage the local jurisdiction to consider modifications to enhance satisfying the threshold requirements.
Thank you.
Yeah, Supervisor Hartman.
So we haven't gotten to that point yet because we haven't submitted?
Correct. Submittal is dependent on the Board of Supervisors' approval.
So if...
Just to add one thing to that, there's been a lot of work done with HCD in the build-up to this process.
Okay, so we don't anticipate they're going to come back with additional requirements, and if they did, they would come back to the board if it went beyond our housing element?
And Ms. Boss has had extensive interactions with the state, and the signals we're getting is that we're going to well exceed the threshold for approval.
And I see an enthusiastic nod from Lucille Boss.
Well, thank you. It sounds really smart, the fact that it's affirming local control and also potentially unlocking some funds. I'm all for it. And a specific question following up on Supervisor Hartman's questions about local control. We just recently had an initiative here about mobile home parks that are designated as senior. And I know how important that is to those communities. Can you just affirm that this wouldn't get in the way of our ability to do that moratorium while we put in that overlay?
Yes, the board has considered a senior overlay to protect the various mobile home parks under the county's jurisdiction. And if we think about the mobile home parks, many of them are really a vehicle for preservation of affordable housing. And so the action that the board took, we think, is consistent with this application and will not be, that decision will not be undermined through the application or approval of the designation.
That's good to hear, and hopefully Martha and some of those folks might be watching right now with curiosity, so I appreciate that. And then on the funding piece, again, you stated in your first opening of this presentation how dire our housing crisis is, and the League of Women Voters is always smart to point out that 70% of our workers are low income and 50% are very low income. So every dollar matters when we're trying to secure more funding for low-income housing. And I know that I understand that CBDG home and home funds were fine this year, but in future years it's very unclear. So can you speak about how this designation could potentially unlock some more funding, essential funding?
I'll invite Ms. Boss to show the slide where we identify the various programs, but receiving the pro-housing designation affords us an opportunity to be more competitive and in some instances be eligible to apply for only the programs that are dependent on pro-housing designation communities. And Ms. Boss, if you would just expand on those, please.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Capps and members of the board. You referenced federal funding sources, specifically HOME and CDBG, or Community Development Block Grant. HOME is focused primarily on housing development or construction, and some of the funding sources from the state that would be eligible or that we would be open to with pro-housing designation could replace some of those housing development funds. CDBG can address housing construction as well, and rental assistance, but it also focuses on capital improvements and public services or general human or social services that may not be replaced by the pro-housing designation funds.
That's helpful to hear. And I just also, in addition to the League, we did hear from Habitat for Humanity, who's very supportive of this designation and potentially could help them secure funding for the critical houses that they build. So I'm, again, fully supportive and appreciate that the staff put this forward for our consideration. I guess, let's see, at this juncture, I'll ask if there's any public comment.
Chair Capps and members of the board, we have one request to speak. We will move to Zoom for our first and final speaker, Meryl Brooks. Meryl?
All right, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Good morning, supervisors. I'm Meryl Brooks, and I'm speaking on behalf of the board of the Citizens Planning Association. The CPA board has reviewed the county application for this designation, and we do have some concerns. My first concern was finding out the program started in 2019, but only 6 counties have been received the designation. And we're just curious, what happened to the other 52 counties? I don't know. I haven't been able to find out that information. But, you know, as you go into this today, we want to say, you know, we're not opposing it. As a matter of fact, you know, we will say something from the state is better than nothing. If you go ahead and apply for the designation, however, we would ask that you do these 4 things for us. Number 1, please encourage the state to provide a realistic funding source to build affordable housing. This program provides far too little, considering it costs almost $1 million to build 1 unit of affordable housing in areas like Goleta and Santa Barbara City. Since the state eliminated redevelopment agencies, communities like ours have been left without a dedicated funding source to build the affordable housing we need. We understand that the county must seek out every possible resource to meet our low-income workforce's growing unmet needs. Okay, second, we would like to know if you are going to apply for this, which is fine. We would want to know that the county continues to push for a permanent local funding source. If the real issue is lack of flexible, dedicated fundings to build deeply affordable housing, the county needs to solve that directly without having the state attach these strings. The county needs to pursue a local funding source, whether it's a bond, impact fees, mansion tax, so we can invest in our own affordable housing. Number 3, we suggest that you pursue funding, but not streamlining. Several bills now pending in the state aim to dismantle CEQA and strip away our local control to fast track even more market rate housing. We need more state funding for affordable housing, and we need to maintain CEQA to help us negotiate for reasonable projects that mitigate their impacts. Fourth, we understand the county must seek out every possible resource. If you go ahead with this, we hope that you clarify whether the county can withdraw or amend the designation later if this ends up undermining your ability to advocate for stronger inclusionary housing or to follow established local planning policies. In conclusion, we believe that the Santa Barbara residents still respect the guidelines set by CEQA. If you approve applying for the designation, please at the same time realign your state legislative priorities to make sure that the priorities are for advocating for funding for the housing that our residents need, and that also we are maintaining CEQA guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Now back to the board. Do we have any further questions, or are we ready for a motion? Supervisor Hartman or Supervisor Lee?
I'm still puzzling over Ms. Brooks' comments and whether the Ledge Committee could take that and whether we want to discuss the CEQA aspect of it and the funding aspect of it anymore here to give the Ledge Committee some guidance.
Any reaction from this?
And I think that fits within this topic.
Director Plowman or Director Armas, would you want to?
Chair Capps and Supervisor Hartman, certainly we can take a look at some of the issues that were raised by the speaker and present a couple of elements in which the Ledge Committee can discuss and consider giving direction to staff. I think the application before you is appropriate as submitted, and we would encourage you to act on it separate from the other elements.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Then I'm willing to make a motion that we approve staff recommendation A through C in today's board letter, and that the Ledge Committee give this some additional scrutiny, the aspects of CEQA and funding.
Oh, second.
Yeah, just clarifying that that's after the application is submitted.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm happy to support that. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Just want to make sure staff got the additional aspect to the motion. I think we're good. Okay, moving right along here. We will take a break after this next item. Brief
Chair
one.
Capps, may I just
Yeah.
acknowledge and express my appreciation to both
Sure.
planning and development for working collaboratively with CSD, and specifically for Ms. Ba's leadership in bringing this to this stage. It took a lot of work, and she was very determined in assuring that it would come forward. So,
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Boss, and thank you to the team and to the cross-departmental work on this. Excellent. Okay, we'll move to departmental item number 3.
Chair Capps and members of the board. Departmental item number 3 is from the Probation Department. It is a hearing to consider recommendations regarding the fiscal year 2025 through 2026 Public Safety Realignment Plan Addendum.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Capps and Supervisors. I'm Holly Benton, the Chief Probation Officer and Chair of the county's Community Corrections Partnership, as well as its Executive Committee. With me today are Deputy Chief Spencer Cross and Chief Financial and Administrative Officer Damon Fletcher, who will present the fiscal year 2025-26 Public Safety Realignment Plan Addendum and the Public Safety Spending Plan as approved by the CCP. The CCP is an independent committee created by statute and chaired by the Chief Probation Officer, and its role is to serve as a local community corrections advisory body. AB 109 created an executive committee of the CCP for the purposes of developing and presenting the county's realignment plan to your board. Statutory members of the CCP Executive Committee are the Chief Probation Officer, the District Attorney, Sheriff, Public Defender, the Director of Behavioral Wellness, a local Chief of Police, and our Superior Court Executive Officer serving as the designee of the presiding judge. The additional members of the CCP who have input into this plan are our Directors of Social Services and Workforce Development, a designee of the Board of Supervisors, the County Superintendents of Schools, and the representatives of community-based organizations who deal with victims and rehabilitative services. Each year, the CCP and its work group update and approve the realignment plan prior to its presentation to your board. The funded programs and services represent a balanced approach to public safety, which includes evidence-based treatment and case management for justice-involved individuals. Realignment funding supports programs and staffing within multiple county departments, services through community-based organizations, and evaluation of our local practices. In addition, each year the CCP seeks innovations to move our local justice system forward. These responses are designed to provide a continuum of services and supports for a population with very complex needs and challenges in order to reduce recidivism. As always, the plan reinforces the strong collaborations and partnerships our county has built across our justice system. This year, in recognition of the fact that realignment funding experienced no growth, the CCP and its work group engaged in a deeper scrutiny of budgeted programs. Fiscal prudence has guided our budget process, including a desire to limit the amount of expansion requests which were added to the ongoing budget, as well as one-time funding which would be requested from reserves. This ensures that there will be reserves for the years ahead. Funded services include enhancements for treatment courts, Proposition 36 implementation, and victim services. And this reflects our county's continued progress toward increased diversion, the protection of victims' rights, jail population management strategies, and mental health treatment. On behalf of the CCP and its executive committee, I would like to thank your board and CEO Miyasato for your continuing commitment to the collaborative efforts of our partnership. I'd also like to thank Supervisor Capps, who now represents your board on the CCP. We appreciate your board's engagement with the work of this committee, and it has broad impacts in our community, of which your board is well aware. With that, I'll turn it over to Spencer and Damon for the presentation.
Thank you, Chief Benton, Chair Capps, and Supervisors. I'm Spencer Cross, Deputy Probation Officer, Chief Deputy Probation Officer, assigned to the Department's Adult Division, and current Chair of the Community Corrections Partnership Work Group. On behalf of the CCP, I will be presenting the fiscal year 25-26 Public Safety Realignment Addendum. The recommended actions for your board are noted in items A through D, with the objective that you will accept the Santa Barbara County Public Safety Realignment Plan Addendum as developed by the Community Corrections Partnership and approved by the Executive Committee of the CCP. To prepare this addendum, individual departments provided program and budget presentations to the CCP work group over a course of several months. Realignment planning focuses on a balanced approach to allocate the state-provided funding towards jail population management, community supervision, diversion efforts, treatment programs, victim services, restorative justice, and also innovation. The Realignment Plan Addendum outlines new initiatives, programs, and staff positions. In April, the addendum was presented to the CCP and approved. The Public Safety Realignment Act celebrates its 14th year of collaboration through the CCP. This act began in October of 2011, and since that time, our local implementation plan has been brought before your board for approval and adoption. In 2011, Realignment transferred the responsibility of specific inmates and parolees from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation to our county. With this change, 2 additional populations were added to the responsibility of local jurisdictions. The post-release community supervision clients, also known as PRCS, are individuals who are exited from prison after serving a commitment for nonviolent, non-serious felonies and who are deemed to be not high-risk sex offenders. Those meeting that criteria are supervised by the Department of State Parole. The second population you'll see is locally known as post-sentence supervision, or we call PSS. These clients are nonviolent, non-serious, and non-sex offender population who serve their prison sentences locally and are subject to a period of mandatory supervision as ordered by the Superior Court. In Santa Barbara County, the number of PRCS and PSS clients have seen an increase over the past year, as you'll see in this table. This is a snapshot from June, and you can see there's over 100 more individuals under supervision this year as compared to last. On average, 425 realigned individuals are supervised monthly by the probation department. If we broke this average down within the two populations, the average approximately 300 PRCS clients and 130 PSS clients. The realigned population comprises 13% of our overall supervised population in the county, which remains a relatively small portion in comparison to the number of clients on standard supervision. A total of 667 unique individuals were supervised during the last fiscal year. Of this population, we have broken it out by gender, race, ethnicity, and age. As demonstrated on this slide, the largest numbers are categories of male, Hispanic, and between the ages of 25 and 44. The CCP funded programs and initiatives are aligned with the 5 goals set forth by the CCP, which are the enhancement of public safety to reduce recidivism, the enhancement and use of alternatives to detention, successful and equitable reentry for clients back into the community, the coordination of efforts to eliminate duplication and inefficiencies within the county agencies, and lastly, to examine and address racial and ethnic disparities in the justice system. Under Goal 1, we have created an objective to support professional training to advance system-wide knowledge of evidence-based practices. This proposed outcome for the next year aligns with new legislation requiring collaborative courts to comply with guidelines developed by All Rise to ensure state and national standards are met. This will involve collaborative court staff participating in training specific to this goal. And just next week, we have 8 staff from the DA's office, Public Defender's office, and the Probation Department attending the All Rise Conference in Florida to improve our adherence to best practices. Under Goal 2, the CCP is committed to the use of alternatives to detention, and this is both pre- and post-sentence for appropriate justice-involved individuals. The objectives under this goal are designed to maximize jail capacity for the highest risk clients, identify those who can safely be released, and also expand our diversion efforts. A newly proposed outcome for coming fiscal year involves further review of defendants in jail prior to their arraignment. The goal is to increase the successful release of those found suitable through judicial review and concurrence. The CCP continues to focus on diversion, and for this last fiscal year set an outcome to execute a contract for a process evaluation to examine the county's diversion options. We successfully met that goal, and a diversion report prepared by consultants will be presented to the CCP next month. For next year, the proposed outcome is for the CCP to explore findings from the report and use the information to establish priorities to enhance diversion throughout the county. This will allow us to develop data collection framework and to support a future outcome evaluation. Under Goal 3, we have set a new objective related to the implementation of CalAIM to support the goal of successful and equitable reentry for all justice-involved individuals. This objective focuses on ensuring that individuals released from the jail's behavioral health units and those receiving medication-assisted treatment at the time of discharge receive a discharge plan and have their Medi-Cal activated. Lastly, Goal 5 supports a systemic approach to studying and addressing racial and ethnic disparities within the justice system. For the coming year, the CCP has set an objective to complete an updated relative rate index decision point analysis. This will build on the work we did in 2021 to compare findings and identify new trends. This will help refine strategies to address racial and ethnic disparities in our local justice system. The CCP has maintained a balanced approach toward enhancements and expansions to the realignment funding allocations. The new staffing or program additions for next year were approved by the CCP to improve victim participation in the restorative justice process, enhance programming within the jails, support data collection and evaluation, and address new legislation requirements under Proposition 36. This year, the CCP took a comprehensive approach to evaluating how future budgets may impact ongoing programs and services. This required individual departments to propose budget reductions or repurposing of their existing allocations as opposed to asking for any new funding expansions. By integrating data and analysis more intentionally, the CCP identified key initiatives for expansion in the upcoming fiscal year, ensuring that resources are directed toward strategies with the greatest impact. The first edition will enhance the District Attorney's Neighborhood Restorative Justice Program. This expansion adds an extra help victim witness advocate to provide emotional support, help victims understand their rights, and guide them through the restorative justice process. The second and largest expansion approved this year was a multi-department effort in support of the county-wide implementation of Prop 36. Proposition 36 was passed by California voters, but did not contain any funding resources in order to establish the critical infrastructure required for successful implementation. To address this gap, the CC pre-approved one-time funds for full-time behavioral wellness clinical staff, a part-time alcohol and drug services specialist, and a part-time administrative office professional. The probation department added 2 collaborative court deputy probation officer positions to provide case management, case plan support, and assistance to improve client success. The public defender and district attorney's office both received funding for an additional 2 positions within the collaborative courts that will assist with diversion and Proposition 36. Our county's collaborative Prop 36 process launched in April of this year, and approximately 20 cases have been referred to date. And lastly, to continue to support programming within the jail, funding was approved for the Grid Alternative Solar Training Program and the Freedom to Choose program to provide job skill development and evidence-based programming. The CCP continues to take a balanced and collaborative approach to the use of realignment funding by allocating funding across jail population management, community supervision, treatment programs, and innovations. Within this collaboration, you have an overlap of justice agencies working together to enhance services to the community. I touched on the collaborative courts, which brings together the Department of Behavioral Wellness, the courts, probation, the district attorney's office, and the public defender's office, as well as other private counsel. Another example is the alternative sentencing collaboration with the Sheriff's Department and the discharge, reentry planning, and diversion efforts. Within the reentry space, we have most of the justice agencies working together to remove silos, share data, and enhance the reentry experience for those who are booked into the jail. This is a space where the holistic defense team shines within the public defender's office. Most recently, we have brought along County Health as a reentry partner, as their experience in Medi-Cal billing and warm handoffs for incarceration to the community will be invaluable. And lastly, another perfect example of the collaboration is the Familiar Faces team. This team was a strategic investment to serve the highest need individuals who cycle repeatedly through the justice and community services systems, incarceration, psychiatric and crisis services, and our emergency services. Beyond the savings of the jail bed days and costs, the program reflects our county's commitment to treating people with dignity, breaking cycles of crisis, and building a more coordinated and humane response to complex behavioral health needs. The Familiar Faces team is a model for cross-department collaboration, demonstrating how county departments can share data responsibly and work together to better understand and support our most vulnerable residents with coordinated, person-centered care. I will share some early data from the team that was launched just over a year ago in April. The Familiar Faces team has made 1,593 total contacts. They have successfully placed 8 individuals at La Posada. 7 clients have accepted mental health treatment. 7 clients obtained benefits or had their benefits reinstated. 5 clients connected with medical assisted treatment services. And 4 individuals completed residential treatment. While these numbers may seem low, it's helpful to remember that these clients are the highest need individuals in our county. They lack trust in our systems. All or most have refused or been reluctant to engage in services prior to contact with our Familiar Faces team, which has led to numerous arrests, stays in the county jail. And barriers of this population include lack of self-awareness, substance abuse challenges, severe trauma leading to behavioral defense, lack of trust in care providers, or they have been unable to thrive in a group living environment. This program has been transformative for our clients and for the team working with them, who have seen the power of a small change day to day and how these changes make a dramatic difference over time. I will pass this over to Damon Flesher to present the spending plan portion of the addendum.
The CCP approved an ongoing program budget of just under $21.6 million. $20.6 million. This is a reduction from the current year spending plan of $21.1 million. This is financed by $19.6 million in ongoing funding and a release of $914,000 of restricted fund balance. On April 3rd, the CCP approved the spending plan, and it included a reduction to the compliance response teams in the amount of $602,000. After this initial budget was approved, the Sheriff's Department reworked their budget and shifted changes in their allocation of $414,900 in order to restore their staffing in the CRT to the previously budgeted level. The CCP anticipates hearing that proposal from the Sheriff's Department on June 5th, and it is expected to be adopted. The change does not impact the total realignment spending plan budget. The major impact of that is a reduction to one custody deputy assigned to the alternative sentencing program, which the Sheriff's Office reports that reduction will not impact the ongoing efforts to expand alternative sentencing. The CCP has a restricted fund balance available to be allocated of $18.5 million. In the current year, we approved one-time expansion requests of $3.1 million.
Thank you, Damon. In closing, the CCP, alongside collaborative agencies, department staff, and the community, have remained engaged and committed to improvements and expansions aimed at addressing the needs of clients across the community. As Chief Benton noted, this year's budget benefited from a robust examination of ongoing programs with the ultimate goal of fiscal prudence. The leaders of the departments have continued to collaborate and commit to better data collection and analysis, which highlights the CCP's commitment to innovation and data-driven strategies. The willingness to be flexible and adaptable as our justice system evolves will ultimately lead to greater success. I do want to thank our work group members, our partner agencies, probation staff, and our community partners who contributed to the development of this addendum over the last several months. I'd also like to acknowledge our talented and hardworking research and special projects team, as well as our fiscal team who prepared the final realignment plan addendum that we have presented to your board today. That concludes our presentation, and we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Supervisor Hartman.
Well, I noticed that I think it's 8 FTE as a result of Prop 36. And I guess it was overwhelmingly approved by the voters, including in Santa Barbara County. But we didn't get additional resources, and so we have to kind of fill the gap. And I guess my question is, it seems like many of the programs that we're filling the gap with are actually quite good programs, but what's the opportunity cost? What can't we do because the voters approved this and now we've got to staff it?
Supervisor, through the chair, I think without funding for this program, we already had known gaps in the county. We knew that there were not residential treatment beds for individuals who are coming out of our treatment courts. And so the options for the judicial officers are somewhat limited if they feel that a person needs inpatient treatment, that treatment is not there for them. So of course that wasn't contemplated necessarily by the voters when they approved this initiative. There is quite a bit of discussion happening at the state level right now regarding what will happen with funding for this. It has become kind of a hot topic now that the May revise has been dropped by the governor's office. And I think the discussions that are happening right now, there's a movement toward funding probation and behavioral wellness in order to make this successful, with the understanding that there will have to be other supports given to this. It's not just that we need staff funding, we need treatment bed funding. And there already is discussion, of course, on the part of behavioral wellness as to how they can continue to enhance that space. I know there's a lot of work being done by our behavioral wellness partners in this space right now.
Great. Well, I just had a comment then. This partnership across the criminal justice partners is really key to many of our countywide goals. And I think you've really been extremely diligent and successful in keeping everybody on board and moving forward. And I think you chair that group. And so I just wanted to express my appreciation to the group and also to Chair Capps, who represents the board on that. It really matters what you're doing. It's profoundly important. And you're creating the trust, the collaboration, the sharing of information, the development of priorities that everybody agrees on. So it's critically important, and thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll chime in on that. Thanks. I joined the board a little over two years ago at a time when I was told the criminal justice partners are really aligned like they had never been. And I think this work of the CCP, I now get to see it up close. Especially, I'm not on the working group, but that's really where the rubber meets the road of trying to really make sure that we share the same goals, and when we're, making sure that we spend precious resources wisely, and everybody's got to reduce a little bit and take a haircut here and there, haircut there. You really see how well we are moving in the right direction. We certainly have more progress to make on behalf of the people that we serve, but it's been really validating to see the working group and see the work in progress, and this whole presentation as a result of that. So I did have a couple questions, because it is hard with limited funding to prioritize and make sure that, especially with one-time funding, I saw some of that play out of how, what that means. But can you just speak to how decisions are made knowing that programs that are valuable might not be able to be funded in the future, and what are we putting in place to plan for that?
Chair Capps, those decisions are very difficult, as you have seen, and sometimes it is a process of compromise. We had, for instance, contingency plans. We had to unfund a couple of our jail assessor positions, which really have been a part of this plan, I think maybe since the beginning, or very close to the beginning of realignment. But we also had the ability to put additional staff behind that. We had Department Business Specialists who could pick up some of the work that had been done. So I think some of it is planning ahead and knowing what resources you may have or resources you can share with other departments to make sure that the work continues. The Sheriff's Office had to make some tough choices about reducing funding in one area to fund something that they felt was critically important, which is the community response teams. And it is, it's just a matter of deciding where you're going to do that, what resources may possibly be coming in the future to help us mitigate those impacts. We know that there are going to be some rough budget years potentially ahead, but we also are keeping our eye on what the state is doing in terms of providing funding down to the counties that will help us to mitigate those impacts.
Yeah, and along those lines, you mentioned the state. I want to understand more, and we can, just the evaluation component to making sure, because we hear about all these programs. I'm particularly fond of the Familiar Faces program, because it just makes such logical sense to somebody in my position who, you hear about just these repeat folks who are just in and out of our system on a regular basis. But as much as I'm attached to that notion, what if we learn that it's not working, or maybe not to use that one as an example, but just more generally, what's the evaluation component going forward, particularly knowing that these pots of money are probably not going to get bigger?
Yes. Chair Capps, sometimes a program can be wonderful and beloved and also not cost effective.
Right.
And, we have had discussion about whether or not Familiar Faces, as an example, is cost effective enough to continue. I think, it serves a very small but critical population. At one point, we had hoped to expand it as a pilot. Now, I'm not sure that will occur, simply because there may not be funding for it. But I think, part of our job is to make sure, as we're bringing data back into the work group and into the CCP, to look at how many clients have been served, what is the net cost benefit on each of these programs, and, are we seeing commensurate change in that population? What are the outcomes? Does it truly make a real difference, which is, really what we're focused on. I think that process has improved a great deal in the last 2 years in terms of really, really looking at the data, like bringing in hard data and commissioning things like the diversion study, which enables us to get a deeper look across the entire system, not just at individual programs. So I think that the work continues in terms of bringing in hard data and really taking deep dives into that to be sure that we are getting our money's worth out of each program.
Yeah, I look forward to that. And I know, thank you, Chief Benton, that in our challenging conversation about the size of the jail and the need to expand the north for safety reasons, the North Branch, what came from that, from Supervisor Hartman and I, was this real desire to have better data of who's in our jail on a daily basis. And you stepped up, the CCP did, to take that on. Can you give an update to that process, where we are now? I know that was just several weeks ago, but it would be helpful to hear where we're at.
Absolutely, Chair Capps. So we have had an initial meeting. The CCP took up the recommendation and passed it on to the work group, which, as you noted earlier, is where the real work gets done.
Yeah.
That work group created a subcommittee, which is chaired by Deputy Chief Cross, and it has a number of representatives from community groups and stakeholders who are attending those meetings and have offered their suggestions. That process is going to take us a little while to work through because we have to establish what we'd like to know and then basically how to get to what we want to know. So I think we're in the first stage of that now, trying to decide what data we would like to look at and what data would be useful to your board, and then kind of moving into the deeper, how do we find that, who collects that, and how can that be presented back to your board. But I think the initial meeting was encouraging. It was very positive and sort of detail-focused meeting, and we're heading on now into the harder work that's going to be done around that.
Right, because we can't collect it all. I mean, so it's really important to establish what we want to know first.
Yes, and I think we've, our community advocates have wonderful ideas, and I think it really is a process of focusing in on what will be the data we actually can get to and what will make the biggest impact on understanding who's in our jail.
Yeah, and thank you. You mentioned community advocates, and I just think it's important to note how involved they are even in the process of the community correction partnership process.
Yes.
So they're not here today, which is actually sort of shocking, but because they're so present in our work. I just want to leave with my last question is really to anyone related to this, to the CCP who's here. 5 years from now, what's your vision? What are you looking forward to? What are we worried about? It's a very general question, but I think it's important when we take this pause to reflect on the budget moving forward. And again, the district attorney's here. No one needs to be put on the spot, but I would like to get a better sense of big picture, what our leaders in criminal justice are worried about or optimistic about. You can answer either one or both.
DA Savernoff, would you like to speak to that? I'll step aside for my colleague.
Perfect.
Chair Capps, members of the board. When you look at the CCP and the purpose of it, when the state entered into realignment, the state basically took a large population of individuals that were generally either housed by, cared by, or taken care of by the state and moved it to the county. So I think when I look at a 5-year plan, when we look at what is or isn't working, are we keeping people out of the criminal justice system? And either creating programs or incentives to keep people from entering the criminal justice system, diverting people from traditional criminal punishment in an attempt to change behaviors or provide treatment or get an individual that otherwise would be going towards a path of incarceration and punishment into a different path. So when I look at it, it is taking this population that was diverted to the county and how is we as a county, how can we provide the services that make sure that an individual doesn't go down a path that results in further incarcerations, more serious incarcerations, maybe even imprisonment in CDCR. So our programs providing treatment and compassion to those who aren't amenable to the criminal justice system? And are we providing the treatment and education to those that have entered the system? And I think that will continue to be the goal of the CCP and how we should look at in judging are our programs successful or not?
Yeah, thank you, District Attorney Savnak. We'll take a pause here and see if there's any public comment.
Chair Capps and members of the board, we have no request to speak for this item.
Okay, Supervisor Lee?
All right, I make a motion, I move to approve A, B, C, and D, and S, and E.
Yeah, thanks, and I'm happy to support this work, and again, just want to really thank the working group, Eleanor on my team in particular. I know it's been a lot of work to get to this point. It looks all put together and packaged, but there was some robust debate, and my hope for the next 5 years is we really just are extremely solid on the data, that we know exactly what we're doing and why, and it's backed up by the numbers. So I appreciate the direction and the commitment for that. So with that, I'm happy to ask for all those in favor. Please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. I need a short break, so we'll just take, let's just take 10 minutes for our last item. This is probably a record. With our colleagues from the north not joining us, it's probably the fastest meeting we'll get through. Okay, we are back for our final departmental item, number 4. Madam Clerk.
Chair Capps and members of the board, departmental item number 4 is from the County Executive Office and County Health Department. It is a hearing to consider recommendations regarding the response to the 2024-2025 grand jury report on the epidemic response.
All right, Dr. Hamami.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Supervisors. I'm happy to be here with our County Health Officer, Dr. Henning Ansorg, as well as our colleagues from the Office of Emergency Management, as well as our Public Health Emergency Preparedness Manager to answer any questions. Today, we are presenting the responses to the grand jury's report. On March 10th of 2025, the grand jury has issued or distributed a report questioning whether we are prepared for the next epidemic. The report focused on the county's readiness and identified areas where a proactive approach for preparedness is better to be adopted. There were 6 findings and 7 recommendations in 3 categories: the assessment and response, bioterrorism, and communications. As you all know, we are required to respond within 90 days, and this is our suggested response by the Board of Supervisors. The report does acknowledge that we, as the County Health Department, are responsible for the response for any pandemic or infectious epidemic that might happen in the county. I would like to start with our thanks and appreciation for this report. I think it was very thorough and done with due diligence, and it brings a lot of good points. And much of our partial disagreement with some of the findings stem from the complexity and the technical nature of what an infectious disease or a pandemic response would require. There were also a lot of areas where we partially agree but yet partially disagree because, again, this field isn't as black and white, and there are so many things that we need to act upon or be flexible whenever this, God forbids, happens if we want to respond. So we, as the County Health Department, we are committed to protecting the public against anything that would harm public health, but specifically outbreaks such as infectious diseases. COVID is still in our memory, and we know that a lot of the findings in this report would be applicable for any pandemic that happens. We do, however, we are involved in disease surveillance and monitoring, and we use a lot of tools and data that we will go into more details about that, where we also look at trends and we compare national as well as local thresholds to preempt or predict sometimes whether there is a need to do anything differently. We do also have regular communication and information that flows from the state as well as national groups such as the CDC, and we have a team of epidemiologists that do look at the trends that we are seeing, as well as we have an infectious disease task force that meets regularly to discuss some of the issues or concerns. So the first 3 findings are basically, or 4 findings are basically in the category of risk assessment and response. So the first finding suggests that the health department has not developed a preactive pathogen-specific risk assessment. We partially disagree with this finding because we actively monitor global, national, and statewide viral variants for trends, risks, and mutations that could potentially increase the ability to cause epidemics. The department receives bi-weekly updates from the California Department of Public Health on emerging threats, as well as access to multiple databases and dashboards. There are processes that are in place to respond to pathogens based on routes of transmission, as it is not feasible to have a response plan for every known bacteria or virus that is out there. And however, we do have several policies that do address pathogen specifics, such as anthrax or hepatitis A, and these are ones that we had to design whenever we were faced with one of these risks. The grand jury recommends that we perform an ongoing evidence-based assessment to determine the potential pathogen that poses the highest risk. Our answer is that this is already in place. This has been implemented. We do implement a process of continual disease threat monitoring through utilization of various disease surveillance tools and weekly meetings with local, state, and federal partners. The county health officer, Dr. Ansork, participates in weekly California pathogen genomics meetings with Theagen, which is the most advanced company in genomic variant identification of pathogens of concern. In addition, our health officer participates biweekly in the CDPH CalCat meeting, where model-based projections of current and emerging viruses are created in the form of nowcasts and forecasts that enable the department to be prepared for the potential evaluation and distribution of pathogens on national, state, and county level. The department has also developed specific trainings, policies, and procedures and resources that we use from the CDPH to monitor and respond to high consequences pathogens such as anthrax, pertussis, measles, H5N1, and others. Lastly, as mentioned, our epidemiology team used predictive modeling tools and linear regression to establish trends and disease potential risk patterns. Finding number 2 states that the department has not developed a proactive pathogen-specific disaster plans based on evidence-based risk analysis. We partially disagree as well because we do have an infectious disease emergency response, or IDER plan, that is attached to the report. This includes a tiered risk profile for known pathogens of concerns. Again, planning for a specific pathogen to have a plan for every known pathogen is not feasible and is ineffective. However, we do look at our plan as it's designed on routes of transmission, and we believe that this is more scalable or more modifiable whenever a pathogen is identified. The recommendation is that we develop a disaster plan specific to each pathogen, and again, our answer is that we will not implement that because we already have an IDER plan and specific disasters plans that are responding to many risks, whether it's foodborne illnesses that addresses enteric pathogens or pandemic influenza plans that are specifically for respiratory routes or infectious disease. The IDER plan is flexible and scalable to meet the needs of multiple pathogens. We also have a mass dispensing plan that is for mass vaccinations, mass prophylaxis, and mass testing. And we have a continuity of operations, a COOP plan that ensures sustainable operations during a disaster or a disease outbreak. The IDER plan is the broadest and includes a tiered risk profile, which would accommodate a variety of pathogens as well as outbreak levels. Finding number 3 suggests that we have not employed current, more comprehensive software for the early detection of potential epidemic risks. We partially disagree. We currently utilize a variety of tools for monitoring circulating diseases. These tools and databases are assessed at different frequency, daily to weekly to monthly. Some of the examples of what our team looks at on a daily basis are the CalConnect, the CARE, which is the immunization database, CalReady, as well as the electronic death registry, in addition to local hospital and clinical data. The recommendation is to require that we identify and acquire and implement current, more comprehensive software for the early detection of potential epidemic risks. Our response is yes, we will implement that. In fact, it has been implemented. This was item number A8 on your agenda for today, where we have joined the CDC National Syndromic Surveillance Program. This is a tool that include both the Essence and BioSense tools that were referenced in the grand jury report as a suggestion. The syndromic surveillance will allow us real-time collection of data from healthcare entities, as well as to validate and share data. We expect after today's pass by the board to start implementation of this tool by the latest of the end of the year. Finding number 4 is regarding wastewater, where the jury determined that we need to ensure that wastewater testing is carried out throughout Santa Barbara County, and we are not currently doing this. We disagree with this finding because wastewater service providers are regulated through the California Water Resource Control Board, based on state regulations. Section 13002 of the California Water Code acknowledges the authority of cities or counties to adopt and enforce additional regulations. However, there is no legal authority requiring us or mandating that the health officer demands water testing. We can do water protection whenever there's a spill or a contamination or wherever there is a hazard, but regular testing for viral shedding in wastewater is not within our authority. The recommendation is to ensure that sufficient wastewater testing sites are operational in Santa Barbara County. Again, we will not implement this recommendation because we have no legal authority to require or mandate wastewater testing. However, it is worth noting that we do get from the state regular results of wastewater testing for those that are being reported, and we can tell which cities that are performing within our county. We look at trends of viral shedding in wastewater, whether it's Isla Vista or Goleta or others that are performing these tests. Finding number 5 relates to bioterrorism, and I know this probably is the one that does not specifically talk about the health department. Rather, it references Santa Barbara County as saying that Santa Barbara County has not established effective channels of communication with federal, regional, and other stakeholders to apply a threat assessment at the local level. We reached out to our partners at the Office of Emergency Management for that finding, and we disagree with this because there is a process of identification and communication of threats, bioterrorism, within Santa Barbara County, and it's well established. This includes the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office, and as a member and participating as a member of the Joint Terrorism Task Force, or JTTF, in conjunction with regional, state, and federal agencies. In the event of if a threat is identified, then the Santa Barbara Sheriff Office would take the lead and coordinate these needed action. If there is a health component to that, then this is where we are pulled into the JTTF, and we assume that role. So our recommendation, based on the recommendation that for some reason they are saying that we as the health department, we need to seek to institute regular communications, our response is that this will not be implemented because we are not the lead authority in responding to bioterrorism, and therefore we will continue being part of the JTTF, and we do not have, as county health, the authority to institute regular communication with federal partners or other entities. The last finding is about communication, and the grand jury in finding 6 determined that there is no established process to assure effective communication between regional healthcare providers regarding local epidemic risks. We, again, partially disagree because our local risks are reviewed routinely by the department, by our staff, our leaders, our epidemiologists, and the county health officer. And whenever an elevated local risk is identified, we are notified, and this information is communicated with regional health providers through either a health alert, an email to the Infectious Disease Task Force, or during meetings. We also provide press releases, and we have what is called a letter to providers to keep everybody on track for anything that might come and be of concern. However, we do agree there is room for improvement by creating more robust policies and institutionalizing some of these procedures to ensure that local epidemic risks are communicated in a routine fashion. Recommendation 6A requires that we establish a community task force for epidemic preparedness by instituting regular meetings and inviting participants. We say that this is already in place, so it will be implemented. In fact, we do have an established county-wide infectious disease task team that meets quarterly and is comprised of local epidemic preparedness partners such as infectious disease physicians representing each hospital in Santa Barbara County, the county health officer, the county health disease control manager, and epidemiologists. We have also representatives from Ventura County Medical Center, Vandenberg Space Force Base, and institutions of higher education in San Luis Obispo, as well as Santa Barbara counties, such as Westmont College, UCSB, and Cal Poly. County Health is currently exploring a formal structure and expanding membership for this group. Additionally, we coordinate and lead the Santa Barbara County Disaster Healthcare Partners Coalition, which convened, I think, last week. They meet regularly, monthly, to incorporate infectious disease preparedness topics. Last week, Dr. Ensberg and I attended that meeting, and it was in response to the 100-year anniversary of the Santa Barbara earthquake. And there were talks about what to do and how to prepare in earthquake. And there was also a very great and useful presentation by Behavioral Wellness on caring for the caregivers during stress time. So this coalition is very important in ensuring that we have a robust communication. Recommendation 6B is that the department ensure that recommendations of the community task force be documented, shared, and acted upon by responsible entities within Santa Barbara County. We will not implement this recommendation because it conflicts with the authority of the health officer. As you all know, our health officer or county health officer is the highest authority when it comes to dealing with health issues and health disasters. And if we establish a body that can demand actions or require specific things, then it will be inconsistent with the statutory authorities and responsibilities of our health department, as well as the Board of Supervisors, as well as the county health officer. With that, we recommend that the board adopt the response in attachment A to the grand jury report entitled, "Is the Santa Barbara Public Health Department Prepared for the Next Epidemic?" and authorize the chair to sign the letter that is included in the package and forward it to the presiding judge of the Santa Barbara County Superior Court and determine that this is not a project subject to CEQA review. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Well, thanks to you both. Supervisor Hartman, do you have questions?
I have a few. First of all, I just wanted to appreciate, as Director Hamami did, the work of the grand jury. This seemed like a very sophisticated report that they put together. My first question has to do with the CDC software. Was that action a direct result of the grand jury report?
No, actually, the timing is just coincidental, but we were working on this for quite some time. There were a lot of legal reviews because this is a data sharing agreement, and we had two options, either to directly share that with the state or go with the national database. And I think this is where our legal department suggested that maybe our national affiliation would be more faster. And that's, it just happened that it's on the same agenda.
I see. And then in terms of wastewater monitoring, if we had the authority from the state, would that be a productive thing to do, or do we?
I'll let Dr. Ensberg answer that.
Wastewater testing is a very powerful tool, and we are actually fortunate that the state and the CDC is providing a lot of wastewater testing in Santa Barbara County. We get the wastewater tested from Lompoc City, as well as Santa Barbara City and Goleta City. So that gives us a very good, snapshot of local situations with regard to potential or to viruses that have the potential for a pandemic. For instance, Mpox or this bird flu that we just recently, had to watch, because both of those happened since COVID, had the potential or have the potential to become an epidemic and be quite serious and dangerous. So wastewater testing provided through the state or the CDC is already in place. It is costly, and our local public health lab would not be the right entity to provide this kind of testing.
I see. So if my memory, all the testing sites are in South County?
Lompoc is kind of in the middle.
Lompoc is one, but not Santa Maria, our largest city.
Yeah, they declined on multiple occasions. We requested for them to please join, and they have declined. They are concerned about privacy issues.
Okay. All right, but we tried. We're not.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And then I just wanted to mention, I had a discussion with Cottage Hospital's outgoing president, and he talked about how the task team that you have, how valuable that is. It evolved out of COVID, but those monthly meetings are really important, and I'm delighted to hear that you're going to formalize and expand that a little. And just wanted to say, I haven't seen Dr. Ansorg in a long time, and glad to have you back.
Thank you. It's probably a good thing if you don't see me.
We call on him only for the important stuff.
Indeed. Supervisor Lee.
Thank you, Chair Capps. I just saw that you briefly touched about animals and livestock, and have you considered in your report and your response about such with dogs, cats, livestock as a potential pandemic response?
That falls under the authority of either the Ag Commissioner or Fish and Wildlife. It depends. So the dairy, monitoring and so forth is not under our purview.
Thank you.
We do, however, communicate actively with both the Ag Commissioner as well as through Animal Services. We have a network of veterinarians that we can reach out to. So, for example, with the bird flu or the avian flu, there has been a lot of work in terms of sharing information. As Dr. Ansorg mentioned, most of the cases were in dairy farms, which fortunately we do not have here in Santa Barbara County, but this is something that we passed along to our Ag Commissioner to ensure that also our farm workers and others are aware of some of that.
Well, thanks to you both. This is, and again, thanks to the grand jury. It presents an opportunity to reflect and to, years later now, to look back and for us to hear more publicly what you're doing on a daily basis, which is really preparing for the next whatever it might be. And I had a couple questions just about the grand jury's focus on communication. Do we have the ability as a county, if there's an expert out there that might not be plugged into a task force, but really sees something, that we might not be seeing ourselves, like sort of there has been notable people in the past that just can sort of spot things, and sometimes usually they're not right, but sometimes they are. I just want to hear you speak about sort of our flexibility to take in potential warnings that might seem a little afield, but could potentially help us in a way. Do you see what I'm getting at?
If I understand, Madam Chair, I think the short answer is yes, absolutely. And I think this is where, when we talk about those communities that either our local or state level or even national level, have those groups that they communicate across and all that. And this is where you start understanding who's who and who is more reliable and all that. For example, we had a call from a group of epidemiologists that are retired from CDC.
Right.
And they want to meet with Dr. Ansorg and I to understand with some of the changes in the communication and public sharing of information at the CDC, how is that affecting us locally? So there are these communications and conversations that are happening in the background. And for people who are in the field, you start identifying who are some of the experts that you can tap into.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and along the lines of water testing, I just want to make sure that we do explore our jurisdiction as much as possible, because I do think, as you stated, Dr. Ansorg, that it does provide a lot of potential. And so I just want to understand, and that's not necessarily for right now, but our jurisdiction over sanitary districts and whether or not there could be some progress there to actually give us that jurisdiction.
I agree.
Again, I just, if that's something that you think we should work on, I believe it's valuable to understand the limits of our jurisdiction. I just signed some papers just earlier as Laguna Sanitary District. Again, I don't know all of the different lines of reporting, but it does seem like we might have more jurisdiction, or at least something to explore, because that is such a powerful tool.
We can definitely work with
I mean, again, if you see it as a priority, I
that.
think it'd be interesting for us to explore the limits of our jurisdiction there. And just, you mentioned the CDC, and I know from, now looking in the rearview mirror on COVID, one of the many challenges of it was just how disparate our public health system is, and that we think of it as this system that all sort of feeds into the federal, but yet in fact it's not at all, right? And so I just wanted to ask you now, with so much disarray at the top of the CDC, does that affect us at all? Is that problematic for us on the ground here? What's the relationship? What's just a typical interaction we might have on a regular basis with an agency that I personally have a lot of concerns over at this moment in time?
There are certain functions at the CDC that are very robust, and for instance, this syndromic surveillance tool, or they are funding a lot of the wastewater testing nationally. Sure. So that has not changed at all. So I'm hopeful that it will continue in the same fashion, but we are always prepared to pivot and go more regional.
Sure.
Because even, believe it or not, even our state health department has a lot of red tape and is much, much slower than we sometimes would need to be. And so I'm actively looking into a more regional approach with neighboring counties, for instance, Southern California and Central Coast.
Sure.
And because pandemic potential viruses don't care about county limitations. Sure. If it's in Ventura, it's here, or if it's in Los Angeles, it's here. So we have to cooperate and collaborate together with those counties, and we do. I have regular meetings with Southern California counties, and we have these discussions. I happen to have a wonderful direct line also to my predecessor, Charity Dean, who is really at the forefront of wastewater testing, and combined with AI, maximal computing power. This is really the future. It is currently actively deployed by the Department of Defense and the South Pacific. And I just had a discussion with her on the weekend that she is very much supportive of bringing that kind of advanced technology to the local level. So I'm very hopeful that that will bear fruit in the not so far future. And it will be a little bit of a local initiative, really regional initiative. So I'm looking forward to exploring that further and happy to let you know if we get anywhere there.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's really the nature of my first question, was just to make sure that we're seeking innovation and that we have the ability to be flexible enough. And I appreciate that you are in touch with her. That's who I had in mind when I asked the question. So, and it just to double back on the CDC and my concerns, you know, if obviously a key way to prevent epidemics is our vaccination policies. And if those were to change statewide, locally, what's the process? What are you preparing for anything to that effect? Just speak to vaccination rates and
Right.
and our hopefully we're fortifying against any potential national changes.
Fortunately, so far, the changes in the CDC did not affect the core functions of what we still can use. So, for example, the National Syndromic Surveillance Program is still active. There were some changes in funding. The funding that was available that allowed us post-COVID to increase our capacity and update all our lab system, hire extra epidemiologists and infectious disease control and all that. That funding, unfortunately, is gone. We are able, through other grants, to plug in some of that. So this is where we are looking at some of the funded programs that come through the CDC as a federal entity, whether it's going to affect us. But overall, beside a couple of changes on how the public access the website and what they can look for and what they cannot, for us as a health entity that works directly with the CDC and other organizations, we don't have that big concern yet.
Okay.
So we're always looking and we're always anticipating, and we are prepared to change or adopt to other tools if needed. And this is why it is very important to not only rely on national, but also local. There is a saying that says public health is local. It is truly local. So the more we are looking at our community partners and the more we're working with our neighboring counties and all that, then this is something that would be very beneficial.
Okay, just as an example, measles vaccinations of children, have you seen, that's set by the state, just to refresh my memory, in terms of kids participating in school.
Yes.
Have you seen any changes of vaccination rates, childhood vaccination rates?
Well, fortunately, our local vaccination rates are exemplar. I mean, they're
95%
above 95%, yes. So we're in very good shape there. The vaccination is also not under the CDC, but under the FDA. So there is a little bit more, maybe a little bit less.
Several layers of protection, probably.
Yeah, a little bit more layers of protection. So far we haven't heard. The only thing is that, which I find unfortunate, is that there's no really impetus to create an updated COVID booster. So that I'm a little bit disappointed about that, and that is probably a political decision. So we just have to see how that's going to go in the future.
So the current booster, current COVID booster, which I think I got maybe a year plus ago, is still, that's the one that's hasn't been updated, is what you're
correct.
reporting.
There are no plans to update it.
There's no plans to update
No,
it.
it wouldn't have to be updated as yet, but it would be good to update in the future, but there are no plans to update those. It's still good to get. It came out in September of 24.
Right.
So people over 65 should definitely get a booster after 6 months. And so that's still the advice.
Sure.
And I was just saying that there are going to be some changes with regard to vaccination rollout or support from the federal government. So we have to see how that goes.
And so private companies, Pfizer, et cetera, they're not working on a new updated booster. That takes the federal government to instigate that?
Good question. I'm not 100% sure, but it's definitely a collaboration.
I see. Okay. And last question, this is just pure interest on my part, is what are our COVID rates currently? I don't need a precise figure, I'm just curious. I still hear
Fortunately,
about
very
it.
low.
Very low.
Very low, yes. The lowest they have been in probably 2 years.
Interesting, okay. Well, that's some good news.
Yes.
Okay, let me see, Madam Clerk, if there's any public comment requests.
Chair Capps and members of the board, we have no request to speak for this item.
Okay, with that, I think we're ready for a motion on this grand jury report.
I'll second.
And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks to you both.
Thank
to
you.
our public health team, our health team, excuse me, and we're making the record here. I think we are complete with our meeting. I just am double checking because it feels very strange to be done before noon. Is this a record? I don't know. It is for me.
We'll hang out with Greg if you want.
Yeah, so with that, I will motion to adjourn to Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025, here in Santa Barbara. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. Thanks to the county. Take care.